Hello and welcome to part 2 of our road trip through France. In this part I'm going to show you a bit more of our time at Les Seilhols, the beautiful river that we swam at, some thrifting at the junk shop and at the flea market, and then the second campsite where we found ourselves and Griffin played pétanque. So this beautiful river is near to Les Seilhols, and on the day that we found it there was nobody else there, so we had the entire pool to ourselves, which was incredible for the kids to find even more confidence in swimming outside, which is one of my priorities while we're away, as I really wanted them to learn to enjoy it instead of to be slightly nervous of it. After this we went on to the huge junk shop, which used to be a tiny little cove but now is far more organised than when I remember it. Nevertheless, I still absolutely enjoyed every moment of it, as well as the local flea market, which I always find a bit interesting because it's more curated, and the sellers really know what they have, so I don't find it quite as appealing as junk shops, where I really enjoy rummaging through lots of things that I'm not interested in. But I managed to find some pieces from both the junk shop and the flea market, which I'll show you shortly. Scott bumped into some of his friends who happened to be visiting from London, so that was a lovely coincidence to see them after many years. We spent some time there perusing all the treasures. The boys had some chips and I found these lovely little pieces for €1. This is all of the collection together, all the things from the junk shop and from the flea market, including these spoons and knife which the boys found. I love these little plates which I'll be using to put pastel colours in, and little metal shapes for making like madeleines, and a spoon which I'll be using for coffee. I've already started using, and this incredible mirror which, if you see on the side, it looks like pieces of hair coiled up, and I love how the mirror on the inside is worn and old. A postcard of Freddie Mercury, many little buttons, which I loved for the buttons but also because of the card that they're on, the designs of the names and the brands, that little enamel pot which is perfect for paint water. I found some 1960s serviettes with mussels and clams on, some pins, all of these things which will end up in my studio, a kind of shrine. Scott did ask me, what do you do with all these things? And I said, I don't know, I just collect them and then position them in places. And then I found these little books, including this piece, which is a postcard deck from an old French sanatorium. I'm yet to look through it with more detail, but it's intriguing. And then a pile of books, which are always great for props, and I just love the colour schemes of them and how they're all slightly faded. I also found this brilliant bag, so I now have a new purse for autumn. I came away knowing that I would find something or other, and luckily the things that I did find are all small enough to fit into the boot of the car. It's been so lovely being at the cottage and seeing all the new things that Scott and Sarah have added, such as that terrace. And then after that we went to a local town called Allar, where they were having a fête that evening, so we wandered the streets looking for the music, where we knew we would find people celebrating and eating. All the beautiful buildings and the lovely colour schemes of the windows and the doors are completely entrancing. This was the one narrow street where everyone was lined up with their tables, eating and drinking. We'd already had pizza at a local cafe, which was perfection. So we simply joined in and had a drink and an ice cream, and then carried on wandering around the streets as Scott and Sarah bumped into their various friends and we explored. Then the next day I decided to set up a table outside for the kids to do a bit of drawing and creative play. I like to approach it when I'm setting up for kids to simply lay it all out, and then they generally come over because they're interested, and then just play around with what it is they find on the table. I do very little leading at first, unless they ask for it, and then I'll maybe encourage or suggest some ideas, but I try not to give too many tasks or define too much what it is that they're doing. And it's always interesting to see how they discover different ways of using different materials, the different props on the table. And this was exactly that case, because they came to the table to see what I was doing and then just silently sat down, grabbed the paper and the pastels and the pencils and arranged things on the table for themselves and for how they wanted to draw them. At one point, one of the twins asked if he could have a rubber and was trying to scrunch away the piece of paper that he had, and I said, well, maybe you could turn it into something different instead of rubbing it out. He seemed to warm to this idea and turned it into a very beautiful, colourful bird. So it was a really lovely way of spending time with the kids and, again, doing what I love, which is laying a table, whether it be for eating and drinking or for playing around and messing. And I was looking back at these shots of me at the table, and it reminded me of someone who once described me as a professional faffer, which I can't really disagree with. I feel like I spend my life pottering around, placing objects in places and seeing where they land and seeing what they evoke. And in a way it feels like casting spells, which then take on a whole life of their own. It's been a very gentle way of being creative while we've been away. And I really enjoy seeing how the boys have really taken it and just eased into it, because we've had no screens, hardly. We've had a couple of days where we've needed to get on with some things, and so we've offered them our phones, but generally they've just really indulged and dove into drawing and finding their own entertainment, I suppose, which is what I really, really hoped for. And feels, in a way, hopeful, because I sometimes despair and worry that we are conditioning them to only understand screens for entertainment, but as soon as they're removed from it, it's just so wonderful to see them light up and find a whole other way of completely losing themselves in something, I suppose, that isn't a video game or a TV show or a YouTube video like this. It's one of my favourite things, really. I feel like I had two priorities for the kids while we were away. I really wanted them to swim and to feel confident in the pool and in rivers and ponds, and also to just have a really good extended period of time for them to create and play and use their imagination and stretch themselves and maybe feel that sometimes uncomfortable and bored, but to stick with it. And they have. So I feel really, really happy about that, and really grateful that we've had this opportunity for them to experience that, because I can see them growing as they do it, and I can see different parts of them coming out and different confidence building, and it's refreshing and beautiful to witness. So I feel, just very, very, very happy about that. We all needed to relax, and we all needed a break away from the daily routines. It's been very emotional being here and revisiting old places and our old life in a way, and the life that I sometimes wondered if we would ever come back, because I think I knew that we wouldn't stay and that we would probably leave and maybe one day have children. And I did say to John once, I wonder if we'll bring children back here, if we have children, if we'll bring them back and we'll tell them what it was like to live in this cottage with many lizards and 2 kittens and lots of spiders, no running water, but a lamp and a gas stove and a fire. And we've brought them back, and we've shown them and given them a window into our experience, which they have loved and enjoyed so much. And the fact that Scott and Syra, who we lived with, have twins who are the same age as Griffin, meant that they've had their own experience of friendship and discovering Les Seilhols for themselves, not only through our eyes but a whole new experience. It's been quite wonderful to see. So we moved on from Les Seilhols onto this next campsite in the lot just by the river. It was very, very peaceful and quiet, and kind of what we needed after Les Seilhols, which had been very busy and lots of fun, but it was really good to just spend a few days pottering about, watching the men play pétanque, which Griffin wanted to join in, but he has plastic balls, and in his words, he was worried that he would offend the French people with his plastic pétanque balls. So we wandered around the river instead and processed our time at Les Seilhols and talked a lot about it and how they can maybe stay in touch with the twins and how we can strengthen our relationship with the land and Scott and Syra. It was a kind of a decompressing, I think, after a very meaningful experience for us all, which was needed. Just, again, time to read and draw and talk, and I guess in a way find comfort in the solitude of it just being the two of them instead of them being a gang of four, which they'd had at Les Seilhols. We were in a really beautiful little village called Vert, which when you looked up, it was surrounded by big cliffs filled with caves, and then in the centre of the village, I think it is, there was a beautiful church with these lovely trees. We went inside and just sat for a while listening and watching the light as it came through the stained glass windows and talking about churches and temples, and reminded me a lot of growing up in Barcelona and in a Catholic culture, and how much I think it's actually influenced a lot of my aesthetics, the colours and the altars, making an altar out of everything, even when we eat. I got a chance to draw some postcards for friends, and the kids joined in, which no doubt will arrive many days after we've got back home next week. And before we knew it, it was time to pack up and take down the tent, pull all the pegs out, pack up our bags, and make our way to the next campsite, which we're now on as we make our way back up to Calais on Friday. Thank you for watching.